Sports Professor Rick Horrow, Beyond the Scoreboard, the show that gets into and behind the trillion-dollar business, marketing, legal, administrative, all the issues in sports, everything that's not on the field or on the course, we cover it. And it's a big time. Indy 500, we'll get into that in a few minutes with some people who are directly involved in it. NBA, NHL playoffs intensifying like none other. Major League Baseball kind of heating up. Baseball, yeah. Football, even more. The gambling issue taking us by storm. We'll get into that in just a second. If you want to see the top issues of the week, look at NBC Washington. Look at HorrowSports.com. 15 to watch, 5 top philanthropic, 5 top tech. And by the way, subscribe to us on all of the areas, Audio Boom, Google Play, Apple. Look for us on Stitcher, iTunes feed. Everywhere we can get it. Get it quickly. If you want to know a little bit more about the business and all of the issues in sports, this is the place to be. We have Andy Bush, who is the head of global events for Octagon, one of the world's largest full-service companies, on the heels and getting ready for the Indy 500, the Indy Women in Tech Golf Tournament. A lot of things going on in Indianapolis, but also around North America. Andy will tell us about that. But before we start with that, let's talk about the Vegas Golden Knights. Biggest story in sports, maybe almost one of the top 10 business stories and regular stories in sports history. They started the season at 500 to 1 odds to win the Stanley Cup. Now they advance to the final round, and it looks like if you put up a $20 bet, you make over $10,000. After a 4-1 defeat of the Winnipeg Jets, the Golden Knights became the first expansion team in all of sports to reach the final since the Blues did it in the 60s. Tickets to Vegas home games during the playoffs have been among the most expensive, if not the priciest, on the resale market. And with the expansion team now headed to the final, the market for games at T-Mobile Arena only heating up. StubHub, last Friday, Game 4, $567, and that's an average. And even though sports books are bracing for a loss, the Golden Knights' success has benefited them in other ways. Hockey betting up 35% across the board in Vegas, a lot more casino traffic. And if the Knights triumph, it'll be one of the most unlikely championships in sports history. Betting, betting, betting. It's not just about that, the economic impact, the social issues in response to the incredibly horrific Vegas shooting last October, and on and on. While we're on betting, though, on the heels of the Supreme Court's decision to legalize it in all 50 states, pro leagues began pitching legislation to states. It happened already. The Providence Journal says baseball, hockey, and the NBA have already made their ways to Rhode Island to speak to state lawmakers for a cut of the action on sports betting should the state legalize it. All 3 leagues proposed a quarter of a point rights and integrity fee on all money on their respective sports in the state. It surely amounts to tens, if not hundreds, of millions of dollars over the years. And the NFL yet to pitch state legislatures on the issue, making it unclear how America's preeminent sports league feels on the topic. The leagues also want the state and its chosen gambling operator to share betting data with them and use their official stats, which would be licensed, presumably at an additional cost. And many believe that giving the leagues a cut of the revenue would help wipe out any misaligned incentives between the existing parties. The legalization of gambling is not only going to change how we view sports, it's also coinciding with the data revolution that'll change the parameters of what we can bet on. And while other leagues, such as the NBA and Major League Baseball, have shown their eagerness to go ahead and try to cut a deal, the NFL sitting it out, at least for now. The NFL noted the opposition to an integrity fee, and different estimates have been floated around how these big fees would be, but the fees could ultimately wind up costing Nevada sportsbooks and later those in other states around 15 to 20% of their annual revenue. With the court decision, however, the NFL could relax its strict policies around teams partnering with casinos, which would likely be lucrative sponsorship opportunities. For the NFL and other leagues, the windfall of cash expected from the court's decision should lead to a spike in everything from TV ratings to franchise valuations and beyond. It's clear the Pandora's box is just about to open. Well, let's focus on the biggest issue of the week, the Indianapolis 500. As they're ready for their annual Memorial Day weekend run, IndyCar veterans believe the current crop of young drivers will make a lasting impact. Chip Ganassi Racing Managing Director Mike Hull told the Associated Press, "We've got good quality guys under 25, and now they're driving for owners who hopefully will stick with them. I think the crop you're talking about is the crop we needed for a long, long time, but we didn't have the stability to do that. Now we do." IndyCar President of Competition and Operations Jay Fry calls this young group advanced in terms of their experience and business savvy. Andretti Autosport driver Zach Veach, he's 23, and he's sponsored by Group 1001. He looks like the perfect guy for IndyCar's youth movement, according to AP. He has a full-time ride with one of the series' top teams, stable sponsorship, and what appears to be a bright future. And if Veach succeeds, he could emerge as a cornerstone of the next generation of stars. It's possible more than 20% of this year's Indy starters are younger than 25. Veach, Gabby Chavez, Ed Jones, Sage Karam, and Kyle Kaiser, for example. And by the way, another quality group will assemble at IMS, the Speedway, on Friday. My company, IMS and Octagon, convenes a symposium of Indy's top sports minds. Colts COO Pete Ward, Pacers Vice Chairman Jim Morris, IndyCar CEO Mark Miles, and Group 1001 CEO Dan Tauris, who's also sponsoring a golf tournament, along with the Octagon guys who put it on, and all of the Indy sports family. More important than that, it's the time of globalization, gambling, television ratings, and the teams and leagues that succeed are the ones that hook themselves into major experts in the field, including the international company Octagon, one of the biggest in the field, global events, teams, athlete representation, sponsorship, and the like. Andy Bush, the Executive Vice President of Events for Octagon Global Sports. The events practice is big. CME, Chubb, SAS, Guggenheim, Walmart, other sponsors call Octagon their representative for their respective events, not just golf, but events across the board. Andy has a lot of perspective on racing, on golf, on the business of sports. Andy Bush. Rick Horrow, inside the boardroom, beyond the scoreboard. We're here at the Volunteer of America LPGA Texas Classic that is so important to the community and the golf industry important. We're on the heels of a report that talked about an $85 billion economic impact from the golf industry. I think that's understated. And somebody who is directly involved in causing a lot of that impact, the EVP of Intergalactic Events for Octagon Worldwide Global Events, Andy Bush. How are you?
Very well, Rick. Glad to have you here.
Thank you. You like the idea of running this planet and others as well?
Yeah, I'd like a solar system.
I will tell you what, if there are golf events on Mars, he will be the first one to run them. I guarantee you that. So 7 professional golf tournaments, probably more, the CME, the Chubb Classic, SAS, others, obviously the LPGA event, the Women in Tech Championship in Indy, which is something that started last year, and now the Volunteer of America Classic, the Texas LPGA Texas Classic. What is the story of this particular event and how you came to be involved in this one?
This event had been around for a few years in Dallas, a different part of Dallas. We took a look at it. They were trying to find their feet in this market. It's a big market with a lot going on. We got to know Mike King and Volunteers of America, an unbelievable organization. So in the fall, part of it was we needed a new look. We needed a new a new logo, a new lease. We needed to find a new partner. So I looked at probably 15 golf courses in and around the region, and I was about ready to cut a deal on my way out of town, and through a friend of a friend in Oklahoma, I was told about Old American. I met their general manager, Mike McCabe, and after about 30 minutes, his enthusiasm, his passion for his property, the way he talked about his ownership group in Matthews Southwest, it was a very easy sign that this was a long-term partner to actually build something with. The golf course itself is kind of non-traditional for Texas. It's spectacular on the lake, the views, very linksy style. It just felt like a home very quickly. So it was a very easy decision to kind of move here.
Easy decision to move here, but maybe not so easy to set up an event with all of the things that happen. You've set up millions of events, or a lot of them in your life. Give us a snapshot of a typical kind of frenzied last week. What has to happen between, let's say, the Monday or Tuesday before and the first time the Pro-Am happens?
I think the big thing for me is you got to have great partners. It's not something we can do alone. The city of Colony was beyond spectacular in all of their civil services and stepping up to help us. The Tribute community, we had a lot of these homeowners out helping hang signs, mesh, ropes, stakes, every part of the process, and getting their hands dirty to make sure their week was a success. And then the team from Matthews Southwest, we've changed the whole landscape here in the last 3 months. We've laid roads, we've built, taken down berms, moved earth, pretty much everything to have the infrastructure to even build what we built. So long term, we're set up to build this to be one of the biggest events on tour versus just getting by. So this first year was about perfect execution, introducing the tour to the golf course and our community here in the Colony. And next year is really how we start to go big.
Long-term snapshot, generic, not necessarily this event, but every other event you do. How do you measure success, not only for the fans, but for the athletes and for the sponsors?
Biggest thing for us first is community impact. I mean, you have to feel like you have a home. You have to feel like you're wanted and welcome. I mean, our staff move here. They live in the community. I think that's our first measurement. The players, especially on this tour, are going to always deliver, and we don't control how they deliver that. So we really need to create an environment where people see long-term benefit to their community. They see the economic impact. We continue to develop programs to engage more than just golf fans. So be very, very inclusive to all economic levels, to be very inclusive to everyone in our community and make sure they want to be here that week.
When you look at your mandate, which is in a lot of your materials, it's, quote, committed to creating opportunities for brands to engage with fans and drive results. So that's just not empty. I've seen you do that all over the country. Explain it.
Well, it depends on your partners, right? I mean, we're lucky with our 7 events on this tour. Their primary mission isn't about what they can sell. It's a much more passive way in building an event to create an experience. And they know if they do those things really well, it'll either change their community and their company will benefit, whether it's their talent or their product. So that approach first for us has really worked in creating our events that continue to be not 3 years, 10 and 20-year more legacy programs.
And when you look at the studies, they're talking about $4 to $6 billion raised philanthropically over a certain period of time for the golf industry. I also think that's understated. But how important is the philanthropic aspect, and how important is using sports and golf to raise money for philanthropy? Volunteers America here, Group 1001, and the Guggenheim for Women in Tech, and on and on.
It's interesting. Our events bring people together. I mean, that's the nature of sports, right? So when people are together and they're in that environment, you can actually create things. You put a lot of good, smart people together and they rally around a passion. One of your guests, Ann Stanford, just had her event on Monday. Everything that Mike and his team have done in a relationship that he's even started with Matthews Southwest, just from this tournament, finding a golf course and the greater good of that. So I don't want to belittle the golf course aspect of it, but Mike and the VOA team and the Matthews Southwest team will do a hell of a lot more good over time together than we will.
Look at your massive octagon crystal ball, a global leader in events and industry and trends. What's the golf business look like 5 years from now?
You know, we're still bullish. We're bullish on this tour. I would have said 3 years ago, 3 or 4 of these would be great. We're now at 7. I'd like to have 10 based on the right situations and markets. So we feel the ladies' game still is not getting its due, and we need to help them in that and leverage every asset we have in our partners, some of the largest companies in the world. So.
And not an octagon infomercial, clearly, but the synergies related to the kinds of things that you all can do as a full-service organization, the globalization, the media outreach, aligning sponsors. There's a lot to do.
Well, I mean, yeah, there's a lot to put together, but I think you look at every company is trying to touch consumers and fans in more ways, and we need to do that in sports and cross-promote our sports. And how do we do what the NBA is doing really, really well and kind of ahead of the rest of the crew, what they're looking at in augmented reality and VR to adapting that to women's game and so on and so forth, and cross-promote those with music, culinary, lifestyle events. So when you come to your week, It is a week that fulfills everyone's ambition their need.
And the one thing that I'm very clear about is when we do colonize Mars and put the golf tournaments on, this will be the first person we hire. Rick Horrow, Inside the Boardroom, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, Andy tells us about big events. We go into the Indy 500. And if we have the beginning of June, can football be far behind? Well, obviously not. But certainly the revenue can't be far behind. Pittsburgh Steelers investor David Tepper agreed to purchase the Carolina Panthers for a record $2.275 billion. People said it might have been less than all of the pundits expected, but yet it's an all-cash deal, basically 2.2, and then the final $75 million being deferred. His 5% share of the Steelers was bought in 2009 and worth $122 million now, based on the team's current valuation. He'll have to give up his stake as he takes control of the Panthers, though, and despite putting in a bid that was hundreds of millions of dollars less than South Carolina businessman Ben Navarro, he was unable to raise Navarro the estimated $2.6 billion he was said to have offered. And Tepper unlikely to make any major changes. And if you think these numbers are crazy, keep in mind that 2014 Business Insider pegged the NFL's total value at $45 billion, more than the MLB and NBA combined. So the NFL clearly has dollars on its mind, but let's spend a few minutes talking about the NFL philanthropically. Really, really important given some of the most recent events. Santa Fe High School shooting near Houston, Texas, for example, we'll never learn. But J.J. Watt told school officials he'd pay for the funerals and for the victims who died. Houston Rockets CEO Tad Brown also confirmed that owner Tillman Fertitta and the Rockets organization discussing plans to support the victims and families. The school shooting at the Rockets-Warriors Game 5, Rockets guard Chris Paul on Friday reacted to the school shooting saying, "Scary, it's become the norm here. We've got to do something about it." And the Astros, before Friday's home game, held a moment of silence and flew the state flag at half-staff. While this is yet another example of the healing power of sports and the ability of individuals like Watt and organizations to shine in the face of both natural and human-driven tragedies, it's also another opportunity for athletes and teams to use their influence to drive societal change. Please, let's not forget. Other NFL issues, by the way, and they continue to be philanthropic today. We want to focus on that heading into Memorial Day. Dallas Cowboys raised $50,000 for the Salvation Army for the game in Jerry Jones North Texas Youth Education Center. Linebacker Jalen Smith, the powerhouse at the plate, the Reliant Home Run Derby, named the 2018 Reliant Home Run Derby champion. 12 home runs, over $13,000. Obviously, big-time fundraising as well. An additional $25,000 raised from 8 nonprofits across the state. All important. And it's not just the NFL, and it's not just Dallas. The Bears host their annual charity gala, 23rd Bears Care Gala, held this week at the United Club at Soldier Field. Through the annual gala, Bears Care been able to award $14 million in grants to Chicago area research efforts focused on finding a cure for breast and ovarian cancer and improving treatment options for those currently battling those diseases. The Bears have a long-standing tradition of supporting numerous charities and assisting those in need. The Bears Care was introduced and incorporated in 2005 as a charity organization committed to improving the quality of life for people in the Chicagoland community, especially disadvantaged children and families. Bears Care issued grants totaling $17.5 million over 100 qualifying agencies. And again, it's not just football in the U.S. CFL stars donate to children's charity. James Wilder Jr., Brandon Banks, Mike Riley secured the top 3 spots in the 2017 Shaw CFL Top Performers program and decided to donate their winnings to children's charities. Wilder is the Toronto Argonauts running back. He donated $25,000 to Covenant House. Banks, the Hamilton Tiger Cats speedy receiver kick returner, donated $10,000. CFL and Shaw Communications announced that Shaw would donate $50,000 to the Canadian charity selected by the league's top performers. Obviously, as we head into Memorial Day weekend, the NFL clearly important on all of these issues. One other NFL issue before we go back to other sports. Riddell added head injury analytics to a smart helmet. They're upgrading their current technology to assist coaches in analyzing head damage tendencies to scale back the prospect of damage. They launched the Insight Influence Response System in 2014 to alert soccer coaches when athletes suffer serious impacts. The primary era system meant to assist coaches and trainers on how to handle potential concussions. Their coaching software, they've got a lot of it. They data test more than 5 million head impacts, which have been amassed they've amassed over the last few years. And the data has been used to inform rules modifications of the sport. And now these tens of millions of situations of head impressions will be used to help coaches implement safer practices day by day. Let's talk about baseball. A couple of issues which are important. One on the major league level. Derek Jeter, I'm in South Florida. We were hoping it turned around, but the Associated Press tells us through mid-May, the Marlins have averaged the fewest fans per game in Major League Baseball, drawing a little over 10,000 per game, the number more than 4,000 fewer than the Rays. Since changing the way they report attendance figures, instead of counting all tickets distributed, including giveaways and heavily discounted ones, the club announced tickets sold. The Marlins have reported 4 crowds of less than 6,000. The capacity is over 36. We've got a positive reception with what we're trying to do, says Jeter, but the bottom line is we want more people to come. We're not happy with the numbers. A lot of what goes on here depends on how we perform. Yeah, no fooling. And while winning helps, some Bill Veeck-inspired promotions and or slashing concession prices a la the Atlanta Falcons might nudge away the franchise's summertime blues. Something's got to work. Let's just see if it works long term. Then on the minor league level, really excited about a new development that is key to diversity. Minor League Baseball announced a new collaboration with Satisfy Labs, a leading artificial intelligence engagement platform, to create bilingual consumer services convention platform conversation for more than 30 MLB teams. This unique partnership marks the first time a sports league communicates with the fans in both English and Spanish. It'll amplify the new Minor League Baseball multicultural initiative. It's fun to be a fan, is what it's translated into. Season-long event. The U.S. Hispanic Latin communities interface will eventually be made available to the participating Copa team to support their respective fan engagement efforts. The platform operates within individual teams' Facebook Messenger pages and answers fans' questions pertaining to the aspects of game day experience, such as ticketing, parking, and other common inquiries surrounding the venue, game, and teams, while providing unique answers based on the user's locations. Baseball and Satisfy Labs plan to roll out an expanded conversation platform and a league-wide fan engagement for the 2019 season. Well, that's one issue, but the bottom line is how you deal with some of these issues from an international perspective. Let's end with that. First, FIFA seems to be maybe turning its brand around. They're forging ahead to plan and organize a 2014 World Cup. London Times says the first tournament being planned to take place in June 2021. China already expressing an interest, being the first host nation for the event. Participating clubs could earn more than $135 million from each of the tournaments. With 12 European teams planned to enter the field, FIFA's noted its preference for inviting clubs that have won at least 3 Champions League or European Cups, the first Club World Cup. And based on that criteria, Liverpool, Man U, Real Madrid, Barcelona, AC Milan, Bayern Munich, Ajax, and Inter Milan would be included automatically. Pretty stout group. Juventus would also be invited on the basis of having won 2 European Cups and 2 intercontinental titles. FIFA seems to be well on its way toward yet another successful extension of its brand. Well, let's talk about the MLS for a minute because they emulate International and Premier League a lot. Changes in MLS salary structure have made the league more attractive to young foreign stars and older U.S. players alike, resulting in deeper rosters, more exciting names, and a level of play approaching that of Mexico's Liga MX. That's the LA Times take, And LAFC Executive VP of Soccer Operations John Thorrington said, "Look at the on-field product week in and week out, and MLS is in a very different place. The types of players that are coming here have a lot to do with that." MLS Players Union released the first 2018 survey of player salaries, which showed that the number of millionaires in the league increased to 46 from 28 in 2017, while the guaranteed salary total for the league's 669 players topped $249 million for the first time. Houston Dynamo's Senior Vice President and GM Matt Jordans told the Houston Chronicle, "There's a lot of top players who have choice to go to China and make a ton of money, but it's a totally different culture, a totally different lifestyle. And the one advantage we have in the MLS is it's a very stable league, very organized, very professional, and it's growing. You only have to look at the MLS influence to see that the young foreign stars are having a significant impact on the American game." We covered a lot this week. We'll cover a lot more next week. We'd like to thank Dan Martin and Tanner Simpkins for putting this together. We'd like to thank Andy Bush for his interview and perspective on Indy Golf 500, women's golf, and all the other things that he knows about. And we'd like to thank you getting ready for the Indy 500. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Join us next week when we go Beyond the Scoreboard.